She didn't ask, didn't knock, just barged in, sipped my lemonade, and told me my pool was community property. Oh, no. Not today, Karen. HOA Karen said the community owned my pool, so I filled it with spaghetti and invited the news. Part 1, the clipboard, the lemonade, and the outrageous claim. She said it with a straight face, while sipping my lemonade from a glass she didn't even ask for. This pool belongs to the community now. I blinked twice. Was I supposed to laugh, cry, or just launch myself into the deep end and never come up? It had been 2 years since I built that pool. Every tile, every inch of that sun-warmed concrete, paid for with the last check from my severance package. When the marketing firm I gave 23 years to packed up and moved to Austin without me. Instead of sulking, I cashed out, bought a quiet little house just outside city limits, planted wildflowers in the backyard, and poured my heart into making this dream oasis real. No kids, no husband, no nosy neighbors, just me, my rescue dog, Beans, and a backyard that smelled like lavender and peace. But that peace? It didn't last long. 6 months ago, Karen moved in across the cul-de-sac. Her real name? Renee. But let's be honest. She earned the Karen title within the first week. She corrected everyone's mailbox height, reported a neighbor's faded porch flag, and started sending out glossy HOA newsletters with bold red buzzwords like accountability and initiative. Within a month, somehow, she became HOA president. She claimed it was by vote. No one remembered voting. At first, she ignored me. My house technically sat outside the HOA's main boundary. But one morning, during her rhinestone stroller walk with her purebred terrier, she peeked through my open side gate and saw it, my shimmering blue pool. From that moment, something shifted. Suddenly, I'd catch her lingering at the edge of my property, pretending to take selfies. But her phone, always angled toward my pool. Then came the flyers, anonymous handouts about shared neighborhood resources, cryptic reminders about community spirit. One morning, I woke up to find a laminated notice taped to my mailbox. Community pool use guidelines coming soon. I nearly choked on my tea. That evening, she appeared on my back patio, clipboard in hand, smile full of menace, and delivered the news like she was announcing a school bake sale. Due to some ancient zoning boundary change, my backyard now technically fell under the HOA's extended coverage. She was thrilled to inform me that my private pool had been reclassified as a community asset for the enrichment of the neighborhood. Swim sessions, water aerobics, a July 4th barbecue, she said. "We're so glad you're willing to share," she added, as if I'd agreed. I stood there, garden shears still in hand, trying to decide if this was a prank, a dream, or the start of my villain origin story. I said, "This has to be a joke." "It's not," she replied sweetly. "That pool adds value to our community." I wasn't sharing a thing. Not my pool, not my piece, not with a clipboard queen and her parade of plastic flamingos. But Karen, she wasn't done yet. Part 2, the trespassers, the flyers, and the legal firestorm. The very next morning, I was at the county assessor's office the minute their doors opened. I needed proof, real, legal, black and white proof, that my property wasn't hers to play HOA queen over. And guess what? Yes, there had been a zoning update 5 years ago, but the previous owner of my house had opted out, officially. My deed, never amended, never surrendered. I was free and clear. But Karen, she wasn't interested in facts. That weekend, I walked outside and nearly swallowed my tongue. 4 people, actual grown adults, were in my backyard. One was measuring the deck, Another, dipping test strips into my pool water like some kind of HOA chemist. I dropped my coffee and yelled, "What do you think you're doing?" Karen turned, completely unfazed. "Safety inspection," she said. "We have to be sure everything's up to code before opening day." Opening day? Was she planning to sell tickets? I called the sheriff. They left just before he arrived, but I filed a trespassing complaint anyway. Did that stop her? Of course not. 2 days later, I got a certified letter threatening $100 a day fines if I didn't comply with the HOA's community asset designation policy. I sat by my pool that night, legs dangling in the water, Beans curled beside me, his chin resting on my knee, watching the sunset ripple in the reflection. I wanted to scream, cry, give up. This place, this pool. It wasn't just a hole in the ground filled with water. It was a symbol of everything I had rebuilt. After losing my job, my identity, my dokori, my old life. And now this woman, with her visor and her newsletter empire, thought she could just take it? Number not a chance. The next morning, I installed cameras everywhere, motion sensors, night vision. If she so much as sneezed on my lawn, I'd have it on video. That afternoon, Karen held an HOA meeting in her front yard. Lawn chairs, clipboards, even a banner that said, "New Amenities Update." And guess what? She stood there in front of 10 people, pointing toward my backyard, like she was giving a real estate tour of her future vacation home. I watched from my porch, took photos, recorded everything. Then I called the zoning office again. They knew me by name now. One of the employees said, off the record, "No, ma'am. The HOA can't touch individual property unless it's transferred voluntarily." I hadn't signed a thing, but Karen was banking on something else. That I'd fold, that I'd give in, like everyone else had before me. And in that moment, I felt something shift inside. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to make sure everyone in this city knew exactly what was going on. If Karen wanted a community pool, she was going to get one. But it wouldn't be filled with water. It would be filled with spaghetti. Part 3. The noodles, the news, and the meme heard round the neighborhood. The idea was ridiculous, but the more I stirred on it, literally over a pot of marinara, the clearer it became. If she wanted a public pool, she was going to get it, drenched in carbs and chaos. So that weekend, I drove to a restaurant supply store, bought pasta by the pound. No, the hundreds of pounds. Spaghetti, rigatoni, fusilli, industrial pots, propane burners. I even rented a trailer to haul it all. The cashier gave me a look. "What's all this for?" "An HOA event," I smiled. He just said, "Good luck." I wasn't sure of the exact plan yet, but I knew one thing. It had to be big, it had to be loud, and it had to be unforgettable. That night I stood in my kitchen, stirring sauce for no reason. Beans curled up by the door, watching me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. Or maybe I'd finally found the perfect response. I was tired of being polite, tired of being quiet, tired of having what I built dismissed by someone with a clipboard and a God complex. This wasn't just about a pool. It was about control. About people like Karen, who steamroll through neighborhoods under the banner of community while never once asking permission. So I made a decision. If Karen wanted to swim, she'd be doing it through a casserole. By May 29th, 2 days before her so-called pool opening, I had 6 propane burners blazing. Steam rose in thick clouds. The smell of garlic and starch wafted over the yard. Beans barked like he was guarding an Italian festival. We cooled batch after batch of pasta in clean tubs. And at noon, the first layer hit the deep end. Spaghetti first, then rigatoni for volume. A few meatballs for visual impact. By sundown, the pool was full. Not an inch of blue in sight, just a golden, glistening sea of carbs, rippling gently like a weird, warm lasagna lagoon. Corey, my chaos-loving nephew, showed up with his drone and camera gear. "You're seriously doing this?" He laughed. "Too late to back out now," I said, tossing in a final noodle. He captured it all. Overhead shots, time-lapse, even Beans posing at the edge like a little pasta lifeguard. Then I wrote the email. Subject line, "HOA says my pool is theirs, so I filled it with spaghetti." 15 minutes later, I got a reply. A local reporter wanted to stop by that night. I said, "Absolutely. I'll make tea." When she arrived, she just stood there, staring at the pool in stunned silence. Then she burst out laughing. I walked her through it all, the fake flyers, the signs, the threats, the trespassing. She filmed a short segment right there, and I gave her a quote I knew would land. If they want to call it a community pool, then I say, let them eat spaghetti. That night, the clip aired on the evening news. By morning, 50,000 views. Karen hadn't even seen it yet, but when she did, oh, you'd better believe. The real show was just getting started. Part 4. The clipboard queen slips in sauce, and the internet explodes. Karen showed up the next day at exactly 11:58 a.m. I saw her marching down my driveway like a general storming a beach. White blouse, high heels, and a manila folder so thick it looked like a legal brick. I stood on the deck with my arms crossed, waiting. She rounded the corner, saw the pool, and froze. 10 seconds of pure silence. Then came the eruption. "You're in violation of multiple health codes," she shrieked. "This is unsafe, disgusting, a waste of food. You're mocking the HOA." I calmly replied, "Nope. I'm demonstrating what happens when people push others too far." She didn't like that. She waved the folder in the air, yelling about bacteria, violations, food waste, community morale. I told her every noodle came from a surplus food distributor, certified for composting after use. She didn't care. She just kept shouting. And then, it happened. One of her heels caught on a rogue spaghetti strand. She slipped, arms flailed, the folder went flying, and Karen, HOA queen, clipboard commander, face planted right into the marinara-filled deep end. The sound? Somewhere between a splat and a squish. I froze. Corey's drone, still hovering overhead, captured the entire thing in stunning 4K. Karen sat up, dripping in red sauce and shredded mozzarella. She looked like a furious, upright lasagna. Then she screamed, loud enough to startle Beans off the deck. She tried to stand, slipped again, and cursed loud enough to draw neighbors outside with phones. By sunset, the video of her pasta plunge was everywhere. National news picked it up. Twitter, Reddit, TikTok. People called her the Noodle Enforcer. One meme showed her mid-fall with the caption, "When you come for the pool, but forget the pasta protocol." That night, a local radio station called for a live interview. The host asked me, "What lesson do you hope Karen learned?" I answered slowly, "Some things are meant to be shared, but power trips and pasta don't mix." By the next morning, the HOA board was unraveling. One member resigned. Another publicly apologized for ever supporting her. Karen? She went silent. No more signs, no more flyers, no more HOA Facebook rants in all caps. And yet, something told me she wasn't done yet. Part 5. The HOA hearing, the spaghetti files, and a judge who's seen it all. The courthouse smelled like furniture polish. and quiet dread. I never imagined myself standing in a courtroom, wearing the one blazer I hadn't touched in 10 years, holding a folder stuffed with printed emails, boundary maps, and drone stills of Karen face first in Noodles. But here I was. Across the aisle sat Karen, lips pursed, eyes cold. Beside her, a young lawyer who looked like he memorized legal terms from a flashcard app the night before. He whispered urgently while flipping pages. But her face didn't move. She was pure calculation now. No more rage, just strategy. The hearing wasn't just about pasta anymore. It was about principle. After the video went viral, and the HOA fallout exploded, the county had no choice but to schedule a formal review. Karen filed a counterclaim, accusing me of slander, harassment, and creating a public health hazard. I responded with a cease and desist for trespassing, defamation, and malicious interference with private property. The judge wasn't amused, but he was curious. And curious judges? They dig deep. He asked Karen directly, "Why does the HOA believe this private pool is a shared community amenity?" Her lawyer launched into a breathless explanation. Zoning updates, community cohesion, shared infrastructure. It sounded rehearsed. Then it was my turn. I handed the judge a copy of my deed. Zoning maps. The previous owner's opt-out letter, photos of Karen's signs on my property, security footage of her trespassing, and yes, the HOA's own newsletter calling it our pool before she ever spoke to me. Karen's lawyer objected. "Out of context!" he shouted. The judge raised an eyebrow. "I've seen the viral video. Was the pasta real?" I nodded. It was edible, donated, documented, compost scheduled, symbolic. And I swear. I saw the judge almost smile. Then came the twist. During the county's investigation, they found internal emails, anonymously submitted, revealing Karen had been using her position to push through changes that boosted her home's value. She'd rerouted HOA funds to install solar street lamps, but only near her driveway. She negotiated a landscaping discount, paid with HOA money, for the 5 homes closest to hers. And worst of all, she planned to list her house with a real estate agent, advertising access to a shared private pool, mine. She never asked, never told the board. The room went silent. What started as a noodle-fueled protest was now inching toward fraud. The judge recessed for 30 minutes. When he returned, his voice was granite. He turned to Karen first. "You exceeded your authority, violated trust, and created a public nuisance under the false pretense of community development." Then he turned to me and granted a permanent injunction. The HOA was forbidden from referencing, entering, or claiming any part of my property ever. Karen was personally fined for trespassing. No criminal charges yet. But the warning was clear. One more stunt, and this becomes criminal. Karen didn't look at me as she left. Her lawyer packed up in silence. But me? I sat there a while, letting it all sink in. Quiet. Solid. Final. Outside, Corey leaned on his car, grinning ear to ear. He handed me a sandwich and said, "Congrats. You just beat the HOA." With spaghetti. Part 6. The wildflowers, the welcome mat, and the noodle effect. When I got home that evening, there was a bouquet of wildflowers waiting on my porch. No card, just sunflowers, rosemaries, and a bundle of lavender tied with twine. I placed it on the kitchen table, then sat on the floor beside Beans, our backs against the cabinets. He let out a sigh so human I almost replied. "We did it," I whispered. He licked my hand like he already knew. The next few days, the neighborhood changed. People I had never spoken to waved from across the street. One man brought over a bottle of cider, said he admired how I handled everything, without stooping to their level. I didn't correct him about the spaghetti. Karen's house? Went up for sale within the week. No goodbye, no listing, just a for sale sign, and silence. Her car vanished soon after. I sat by the pool that night, sipping wine from a neighbor's gift basket, listening to the crickets hum in the twilight. The pool lights flickered on, soft yellow glow rippling against freshly cleaned water. There were still a few pieces of pasta clinging to the tile. I left them there, not as a joke, not as revenge, as a reminder that sometimes absurdity is resistance, and humor is sharper than any HOA charter. The next morning I drained and refilled the pool, cleaned every inch, restored it to its quiet self. I kept one tile, the one faintly stained orange from sauce, mounted it in a frame by the back door, above the light switch. It wasn't about winning. It wasn't about destroying Karen. It was about keeping what was mine and showing others that they could do the same. All it took was a little courage, a pinch of chaos, and maybe 400 pounds of carbs. Summer returned like an old friend. No clipboard, no fines, no threats in bold red letters, just breeze, birdsong, and the scent of tomatoes climbing my trellis. One day, Corey showed up with a gift. A framed drone shot. Karen midair, frozen in time. Clipboard floating beside her like a forgotten life raft. He added text at the bottom. Property rights and pasta. I laughed so hard I had to sit on the pool step. We hung it in the shed, right above the gardening tools. I labeled the space, Museum of Neighborhood Resistance. Beans barked when we passed it, like he remembered. Maybe he did. Part 7. The picnic, the press, and the last laugh in lemonade. I decided to throw a little gathering. Nothing dramatic. No press, no headlines, just a few neighbors, some chips, drinks, and a Bluetooth speaker playing soft jazz that drifted like sunlight. I called it the anti-HOA picnic. No rules, no motions, no minutes, just people by people. A couple brought over pool floats, flamingos and pizza slices. One woman showed up with a Jell-O mold shaped like a gavel. We laughed. We floated. We shared stories about clipboards and zoning letters like veterans swapping tales from the front. For the first time in months, it felt like the neighborhood exhaled. A few days later, a reporter from a national outlet emailed me. Not local. National. They wanted a follow-up. She showed up in sandals and a notebook, asked me if I'd ever planned for things to unfold this way. I smiled and said, not even close. I just knew. If someone tried to take something I built with my own hands, I wasn't going to roll over and let them. I told her it wasn't about rebellion. It was about dignity. She nodded, jotted that down. Then she asked if she could dip her toes in the pool. I said, only if you bring pasta next time. She laughed and promised to return with rigatoni. A week later, a small package arrived. No return address. But I recognized the handwriting. Inside, a single page, no message, just a screenshot of a post from one of Karen's former allies. Sometimes, leadership is knowing when to leave. I didn't know if Karen sent it. Maybe someone else did. But honestly, it didn't matter. That chapter closed. The pool was mine again. The land, the quiet, the lavender by the fence, all mine. The garden thrived that season. Beans dug up 3 tomato plants thinking they were meatballs. I forgave him. Neighbors stopped by for sprigs of rosemary. Someone brought me homemade honey from their backyard hive. One woman said I inspired her sister to fight back against her own HOA in another state. She called it the noodle effect. I liked the sound of that. Part 8. The essay, the echo, and the last piece of pasta I started writing again. Not just grocery lists or to-do reminders, but real writing. Essays. Thoughts about quiet resistance. Stories about what it means to protect what you love, without losing yourself in bitterness. I submitted a piece to a local magazine, under a pseudonym. They published it. The title? When the Water Turns to Pasta. I didn't sign it, but people knew. One reader wrote in and said the story made her cry, then laugh, in that order. That felt like enough. The pool never hosted a yoga class, never became a shared amenity, never saw another HOA flyer taped to the fence. But it became something else, a symbol, a quiet rebellion, a reminder that dignity doesn't always show up with a megaphone. Sometimes it's just spaghetti, and a boundary you refuse to let others cross. Kids still asked if they could swim. I always said yes, as long as they brought their own towel and didn't feed spaghetti to the dog. Beans never really stopped staring suspiciously at the deep end. Maybe he was waiting for the noodles to return. Sometimes. So was I. One evening, as the sky melted into gold, I floated on my back, eyes to the clouds, the water warm, the breeze soft. Somewhere nearby, someone played a harmonica. Badly, but with heart. I smiled. Because not everything has to be a war. But when it is, I've learned something important. There's more power in humor than in shouting. More strength in spaghetti than in steel fences. And sometimes, the best way to stand your ground is with both feet planted in pasta. Part 9. The farewell, the frame, and the legend of the noodle pool I came close to giving up. So many times. I could have drained the pool, built a taller fence, ignored the signs, the noise, the clipboards. But I didn't. I chose the mess. I chose the absurd. And now, I had peace. Real peace. My pool, my rules, my story. If someone somewhere ever tried something similar, tried to steal their sanctuary under the name of community improvement, I hoped they'd remember mine. The woman who fought HOA tyranny with marinara. One morning, summer easing into fall, Karen's house finally sold. No open house, no online listing, just a moving truck and a silent retreat. I left a small box on the welcome mat for the new family. Inside, a bag of uncooked spaghetti and a note, handwritten in soft blue ink. Welcome to the neighborhood. I never saw who picked it up, but it didn't matter. The new neighbors were kind. The kids waved like we'd known each other forever. Their dog tried to jump in my yard. The mom brought cookies. The dad laughed so hard at the noodle story, he nearly fell off my porch swing. I made lemonade that evening. We sat on the deck as the sky turned pink. The new HOA board, under new leadership, sent a formal apology. Polite, unsigned, but genuine. They invited me to speak at their next meeting, as an honored guest. I declined. Kindly. I had no interest in anything that required a name tag and a folding chair, but I appreciated the gesture, at least now. They understood boundaries. Some homes need governance, but some just need quiet. Tomatoes growing wild. A hammock that squeaks when you exhale. A rescue dog who still side-eyes pasta water. Corey showed up not long after with one last surprise, a canvas print. The drone photo, Karen mid-splash. Clipboard airborne. Fettuccine, flying like celebratory streamers. He titled it, Property Rights and Pasta. We hung it in the shed, beside the rake, under the mosquito repellent, and dubbed the space, the Museum of Neighborhood Resistance. Beans barked when he walked by, every single time. We threw one last pool gathering that season. Small, easy, no flyers, no fines, no one policing the snack table. Someone brought a Jell-O mold shaped like a judge's gavel. I nearly cried laughing. That night, as the stars blinked on one by one, I floated again. The water was warm, the sky endless, and somewhere inside me, I knew. This wasn't just about a pool. It was about standing your ground and choosing not rage, but joy. It was about spaghetti and the story that would never be forgotten.